As soon as you start worrying about how do I make up for my harmful karma that has been produced and accumulated upon us. Well, that's not, somebody was in the banking industry. We should say that has been produced and the effects are playing out as we are speaking. Just here, just nowhere else. Shuman Katto Shu Dai 86 Soku Negawako wa moro moro no ukuze yo Utekiko Hokoji ga yamai o totsute Kori ni omotte iwaku Tada negawako wa moro moro no shou o kuze yo Tsutsishinde moro moro no shoumu o jitsu to suru koto nakare. Goju. Seiken wa minna yogo no gotoshi. Entangling Vines, case 86. Know the emptiness of all that exists. When Prefect Yudi came to inquire about layman Pang's illness, Pang said to him, I ask only that you know the emptiness of all that exists, and be careful not to take as real all that does not exist. Be well. Life in the world is like shadows and echoes. You might have been thinking, what is he waiting for? He's always waiting for the same thing, for this wonderful dynamic moment of complete togetherness in silence. We have tasted this delicious silence together in the morning. Even those of us who are new to the 10-clause canon life-prolonging sutra that ends with a loud moo shout. Even if we don't know that, the silence that comes after it is absolutely delicious. Silence. Silence is dynamic. And as the musicians who are here know, the most challenging piece to start or to end is the one that starts or ends with a rest. Music doesn't start with the first note that you can hear. It doesn't end with the last note. So that's a really interesting way to also connect with this formal practice that we have. Because we don't do anything different from following a score and turning something that is a schedule on paper into a living event. Event is a good word. I don't want to say performance because performance always sounds like, well, they are performing. This is performative. Yeah, it has some kind of an end to it, but it's not. The formal practice, really, the end of the formal practice, or what it is a means to, is doing it. Nothing more, nothing less. Just doing it. Just being completely with it, so we have the chance to disappear in the embodiment of whatever we do. Beginning with a simple gasho, which is not so simple, because it brings together all that is apart in this very moment. And when we give ourselves truly to it, it's not just the hands coming together. It's not just our mind, heart, our attention, our mindfulness being here, our breath being connected to it, but the complete unification. And what is it followed by? Immediate separation. Very important that we don't attach to either. If we were to stay in gasho all the time, life would be very, very difficult. I can imagine eating like that. Yeah, somehow I will get the food to stick to my fingers, but when it comes to wiping, I'm not so sure how that would work out. Yeah, and our consciousness would really teach us to wipe well, because that thing is right in front of your nose. And then comes the next meal. Wow, is that chocolate? I hope you see how utterly humorous this human existence is. The only difficulty with it is that we take ourselves just so damn important. It causes a lot of trouble. And in the confines or in the parameters of this practice, there are many things that are set up to exactly trigger that. So if you got triggered by any of this here, congratulations. You noticed this, I hope. If you didn't notice it, well, we did. We cannot see what we have to point our attention towards if we are not aware of it. And building this awareness of the confines of our freedom means how restricted are we? How are the fetters that we carry around with us? Beginning with an identity, beginning with all kinds of thoughts and expectations. All of this is challenged here in this very strict practice. I heard comparisons that, and I thought of that myself when I first came to this practice where it was in the monastic style. It is like boot camp. Yeah, it is like boot camp. And here in the morning even, fast kinhin is like, get up, put your backpack on, and there we go. It is the same intention to make us aware here, though, that where is it that this what seems to be imposed on us, that we take onto us, I hope voluntarily and by intention, where it really gives us the jab, so we can look at that area. What is it? Maybe there's nothing sticking out of the wall here. Maybe it is me who can't pass through because I am too wide to fit through this opening. So that's what's happening here. And if it happens, it happens. We don't have to feel guilty. We don't have to feel embarrassed of all. Be assured when you're here and you manifest your being a human being, it comes from the very beginning with the guarantee for absolute forgiveness, whatever it may be. And that is a practice that I would recommend to everybody to take up for themselves, the practice of forgiveness. And not to take it lightly. And especially if it comes to things we say to ourselves, I can't forgive myself for that. I've said it before, but I will repeat it. Forgiveness and Zazen have a lot in common. We do a lot of Zazen. And my ordination teacher, in 80% of all Doksans or all Sanzen that he gave, he rang the person out, and his saying on the way, his goodbye kiss was, more Zazen. Yeah? More Zazen. It doesn't seem necessarily to make an immediate impact. Isn't it always, just as I got to the core of it, the bell rings. How is it that the Jikijitsu interferes with my supreme serenity, which is so deep that I get immediately upset when I hear the bell? However, an hour earlier, sitting there in pain, why is he not ringing the bell? He's not doing his job. Is he sleeping? Yeah, he's sleeping, and then he says to others, wake up! Yeah? So we're capable to all of that in our Zazen, but still it has a very, very profound, transformative effect on us. Just by engaging in this process of the dynamic movement of the energy. And forgiveness is similar. It might be that we don't sit down, and even though Hakuin Zenji says, even if you just sit down one period of Zazen, all your harmful karma will be erased. Very few people have sat down for the first time and then, I'm done. See you later. Very few. Same with forgiveness. If there is a big thing you can't forgive yourself for, don't worry about it. Take a step back and forgive yourself for not being able to forgive yourself for that big thing. And so this undermining activity of forgiveness, of saying, so this is what Zazen and forgiveness have in common, is to say, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. This is this forgiveness and Zazen step into this unconditional surrender to how it is, to tatata, to suchness. And suddenly nothing is added, nothing is taken away. And things, you know what they are? Okay. But we live in a competitive world. This monastery is called Daibosatsu Zendo because of Mount Daibosatsu and Soen Roshi. Mount Daibosatsu is in Japan, and Daibosatsu Zendo is in America. And the story that I was told about Soen Roshi when he was here is the following. Him coming here to this very competitive America. So one day, to the Kessei students or whatever group was here, he announced that, well, today, Enso practice. And everybody had to draw an Enso with a brush. And he said, oh, today Enso practice. Then we put all up, and I will select best. Oh, the bait is out. The bait is out. Many Ensos were drawn, considered. Another sheet of paper, another dunk in the brush, another one. The other one was better. And after all that frenetic activity at night, everybody ended up with one, and they were put up. And apparently so, and Roshi came and looked at the world. And he looked at all of them, yeah. And he turned around to all the calligraphers here and said, all best. All best. We have to understand and truly be comfortable to know that we are best when we are all equal. As soon as we want to be better, trouble begins. Because with better, immediately, duality comes into existence. Immediately. If we don't have something to measure against, duality doesn't exist. This all is non-dual until we, our mind, our hopes, our fears, our recollections, cut it in half. So, tonight, somewhere it's night. Today, this morning, or yesterday, we are looking at a case number 86, and we are encountering once again layman Pang. What intonation is it? Pang. And I might be wrong. And that's okay. He won't mind. So he's here again. And he appears in a number of koans. Sometimes in the Shumon Katoshu they are together. And so when one goes through it case by case, there are stretches. There was a stretch that we went through of 6 talks about Mu. All the Mu koans together, six in a row, yeah? And then after that one is truly mooed out. And then here's a stretch of layman Pang, of Hokoji. Hokoji appears again, and also who appears with him is the local prefect, UD. And he was a student of the layman. And yesterday or last week or last year, whenever the last talk we had about case number 85, remember I told you the story when Hokoji was dying. And he said to his daughter Reisho, go out and tell me when the sun is in the zenith. And she knew that what he's looking for is when the sun goes up to the top, and then when it starts going down, he was going to die. And she went to the door and then came back and said, hey, it's already dark, or is there an eclipse? You should go and look. And he got up from wherever he was. There are different accounts. One account is he was on a kind of a bed. Another one said he was in a chair. And then, of course, the really Zen version is that he was sitting in Zazen posture, you know, the preferred posture to die. Huh? And so he got up and he went to look outside, you know. And in the meanwhile, either she lied down on his bed, or she sat in his chair, or she took the Zazen posture and died. And he came back and saw it. Yeah. How did she die? She might have eaten a fly. Perhaps she'll die. So she died, and he saw that she was getting ahead of him again, which is fine. And he hung around for another week. And in this week, the prefect came and asked him, and the interesting thing is here, how it's translated, when the prefect came to inquire about his illness. How's your illness doing? Not how are you? Very strange translation, yeah? You've been ill. Is your illness doing well? Yeah, it's very well. Yeah. Pang still was able to speak and to teach, and he said to him, I ask only that you know the emptiness of all that exists. And be careful not to take as real all that does not exist. Be well. Life in the world is like shadows and echoes. And here's another big word in here that starts with E, one of the bad E words. Of course, the first number one offender of an E word is enlightenment, right? Another one, and here's number two, is emptiness. Emptiness. When I look back at my practice, I have engaged in Zen practice for many, many years, being complete empty of a true understanding of emptiness in the Mahayana sense. And there are so many ways to think about it in the wrong way. And we fall back into that sometimes, you know. When I listen to very early talks of mine, then there is this emptiness that is different. It's a different understanding than what is really in the essence. And discovering the true essence of shunyata in the understanding of the Madhyamika school and then of Zen later, I have to credit Victor Sogen Hori, who really, really very well presented it to us in a seminar on the Diamond Sutra in 2014. He and Kendo Zenji, Professor Hal Roth from Brown University, gave a seminar that we put on at the Providence Zen Center in 2014. So, shunyata is very easy to explain. Shunyata is the absence of svabhava. Is that clear? Yeah. So, it was Nagarjuna and his commentators. And emptiness developed in Buddhism out of one of there are some basic properties of all existence. I think it's called the Trilakshana. Anyone? Anicca?
Impermanence.
Anicca, impermanence, yeah. Dukkha and anatta. No self, right? Those are the three. And the no self, anatta, or also sometimes anatman, no individual soul, first was only understood from a human-centered way of thinking of it. Religion is mostly human-centered because it originates in human beings. So, anatman, there is no individual soul. But now it began to go the Mahayana path, which means suddenly the understanding was extended that it's not just human beings, but it is everything that exists. So there is no inherent selfhood in any body and anything. all phenomena, all dharmas in the universe lack or have the absence of intrinsic nature. And the word for intrinsic nature is svabhava. The final nature of all things is dharmata. Dharmata, suchness. There are various authors that write differently about it, but emptiness is clearly often misunderstood as nothingness or the absence of existence. It's a common misunderstanding to think that emptiness is, well, nothing really exists, yeah? And this is when Hakuin's nose was twisted. Just to zum Wohl. And so, what is it then? Is it, if we think that everything comes from emptiness and returns to emptiness, yeah, then that is just another refined way of looking for another kind of substance on which everything is based. I used to think when you pour all the colors together into one bucket, you'll end up with pitch black paint that has everything in it. It's a nice image, yeah? It's a nice image. But imagining that this pitch black paint is emptiness is not accurate. Emptiness doesn't contain anything because it's not a thing. Yeah? So this kind of reification of emptiness is not helpful. So, svabhava. Svabhava then means if there is no inherent nature in all of this, then that is static, then it must be something that is dynamic. Dynamic. And we know from our experience, if there is anything that is dynamic, then it is engaged in an activity of changing. And when there is change, then there is an activity of relating. Movement becomes relative. Relative means in relation to space, in relation to time. When consciousness comes up and subject sees objects, that's also relationship. So there is relationship, and that means that this activity that is happening is an activity that is interdependent. There's a teaching in Buddhism that speaks about such an activity. In Japanese, it's called engi. Engi. Engi is pratitya samutpada. Yeah? The dependent origination. The dependent origination that is maybe most beautifully expressed in the image of the net of Indra, where everything is connected throughout the whole universe, and the various intersections of that net of Indra, each has a jewel in there, a vajra. And each vajra has so many facets on it that in itself it reflects all the other vajras in that net. We can just call it interdependence. Interdependence of existence. So that's why when you read Nagarjuna, he actually equates shunyata and the notion of conditionality, of pratitya samutpada. That is ku, shunyata. Svabhava in the Japanese is called jisho, self-nature. Self-nature, intrinsic existence or inherent existence, essence. essence as a reified things. So it is important to know that this essence is not an essence that is a thing, but the essence here is change. Dynamic development of everything. So now that we're equipped with that, how can we explain that? There are different ways to relate to it. One of it is the explanation of a mirror. When you stand in front of a mirror and you look into the mirror and you see your own image, well, it's clearly there, but it has no intrinsic nature of itself. Neither is it the mirror. That's the modern explanation, or a way to make people get close to being able to deal with it and to understand it. But here's another one that goes back to the Buddhist teachings, and at that time they used a chariot as an example. In teaching about shunyata to one of the kings, one of the Buddhist teachers had a chariot brought. This is a chariot. Yeah, it is a chariot. Then they started taking the wheels off. Well, is it still a chariot? Or, yeah, it's still a chariot, but it's disassembled. When does it end? Or when is it no longer a chariot? And so in this process we can discover that, well, disassembled chariot is already dependent upon the idea of something that it is not. So, but clearly it is, there's no essence of chariotness in there. There's no such thing. No essence at all. It's a fixated ideas of ourselves. And the Diamond Sutra, of course, teaches us to us with every sentence where it says, this and this is not really this and this. We just call it this and this. So how should we then look at that? We have to learn that it was important for the king to have a chariot. So he could be brought here and there. But that's a functional view from a human-centered point of view. Once they took the wheels off, the chariot is broken. No, it's not that. It's our idea of the function that it should perform. So when we start then looking at whatever it may be, whatever label we attach to it, when we start seeing this phenomenon as a dynamic event that in this moment does exactly what Hakuin Kaku Zenji speaks about, as the truth eternally reveals itself. Currently, this year is revealing itself as, we call it a saucer maybe. But the wood that this is carbon that was plucked somewhere from the air, at some time, somewhere. The tree was cut down. And it's very much like the 5 reflections that we chant before we eat, so we understand that the meal is a perfect example for an event, you know? We call it black beans with avocado, cilantro, and dressing, and some kind of squash. And what's really nice here is it's an event, and it demonstrates to us what shunyata is, you know? Can we experience shunyata? Absolutely. what happens to the dish? We chew it. It goes down our esophagus. It's in our stomach. Then it goes into our intestine. And we get the energy from it. Where is the mealness? There is no mealness in that. It's all completely gone. Very good example for that. How dynamic it is. So this is what Hokoji is talking about to this prefect. I ask you only to know the emptiness of all that exists. And be careful not to take as real all that does not exist. What is that second half about? Because we could think the emptiness of all that exists means that it doesn't exist. But even if it's empty, it seems so real. And that is absolutely not in conflict. It's only in conflict when we make our reality a reality of separated things. The things that we think about are not real. Thinking about this as a saucer is not real. But what is real is this. Anyone want to try? That is real. So emptiness, very important. There's meditation about emptiness. Don't you all love science? Don't you? Science is great. Science is great. That is what allows us to have lights, air conditioning, heat, medicine. All based on science. Science is the study of that reality, of those phenomena that we can see, and addressing it within a very, very restricted approach. But that is very useful in this world, because medicine is great. When you have a cough, and you can take a medicine that stops it without harming you, that's wonderful. Even though that the Robitussin that you're drinking is empty, even if the bottle is full. So here is this interesting thing. So there's emptiness meditation. The University of Derby put on a study comparing emptiness meditation to mindfulness meditation in a controlled condition with 25 participants, including Buddhist lay practitioners and monastics. To be considered for the study, the participants were required to have a daily meditation practice that spanned an average of 25 years. That's a very elusive group, I have to say. How did they find 25 people just there? But they did. So, in addition to that, the scientists and their team interviewed each potential candidate to explore their understanding of emptiness before inviting them to participate. So maybe you don't know when you come to Doksan, you're interviewed for the next study, if you will be in it or not. So during the study, the participants engaged in a practice of emptiness meditation on their own time. The emptiness meditation consisted of an initial phase of concentrative meditation, followed by a phase of investigative meditation. This two-stage process involves searching for an existing self and examining the underlying nature of experience, and then transcending conceptual boundaries, such as space and time, in order to obtain a universal, far-sighted outlook rooted in compassion. I should have gone there. What have I been doing? While experiencing emptiness, participants retain control over the duration and content of the meditation and awareness of their physical body and environment. While experiencing emptiness. Science is great. Within the same month, they also practiced a mindfulness meditation that didn't involve any emptiness components. Great. How do you do that, right? Before and after each meditation, participants filled in a series of psychometric tests, which were analyzed by the research team to compare the effectiveness of each meditation approach. The results showed that even though participants already demonstrated high levels of well-being and spiritual insight, meditating on emptiness led to a 24% reduction of negative emotions, 16% increase in compassionate feelings, and 10% reduction in attachment to themselves as their external experiences. Findings also showed that participants experienced emptiness as an underlying fabric of the mind and reality. In other words, they felt that the nature of reality is not as concrete as people generally think. Now I will extemporate here and say, the bullshit generated by this study weighed 25 pounds. No, it's a wonderful thing to do. But I don't know, who did it help? This is a study I would defund. But it's still interesting to see what is done to explore all these topics, and how easy it is that we are just caught within that what is assumed. Science is great, but it does not apply to this here. Quantification, qualification, or quantification of qualitative improvement. What are we going to do with this? Advertise it. We have to put that in our literature. We offer emptiness meditation. Up to 24% of reduction in negative emotions, 16% increase in compassionate feelings, and 10% reduction in attachment to yourself. Also guaranteed 100% chance of pain in your knee, your back, and wherever you never thought it would hurt. Yeah. So that's not how we study or learn about emptiness. Emptiness has to have the emptiness of emptiness. Shunyata of shunyata. Shunyata is not a thing. Shunyata is a process the whole dynamic of the Dharma activity is the expression of shunyata. And Hokoji wishing, it starts like the dedication, like the fueko. Nigar wakawa. Yeah, let us wish, let us pray, let me hope. I ask. And in this case, it's not necessarily asking Prefect UD. I ask only that you know the emptiness of all that exists. And be careful not to take as real all that does not exist. To be not caught up in duality. To be not caught up in dualism where it doesn't belong. Again, if science creates wonderful medicines, clothes, protections of life, then it is the warm flesh and blood and merciful transformation. But there are also transformations that are not that merciful and sometimes just silly. Now, before we go to the last sentence of this here, I wanted to pull out another koan because now, of course, now all the snow is gone, you know? This morning we had this wonderful snow and it was coming down, and so I wanted to just bring up Hokoji with case number 42 of the Hekigan Roku of the Blue Cliff record. And the title in some of the translations is Hokoji's Beautiful Snowflakes. I don't know, some of you might have done the case, but here's how it goes, the main subject only. Hokoji was leaving Yakusan. Yakusan was the successor to Sekito Kisen. Remember we mentioned Sekito Kisen as the teacher under whom Hokoji first studied. And he continued then to study under Yakusan. They know each other very, very well. And Yakusan led 10 Zen students, more advanced Zen students, to escort Hokoji to the temple gate to bid him farewell, because he was leaving. And it was April in the Catskills. And Koji pointed to the falling snowflakes and said, "Oh, beautiful snowflakes, one by one, but they fall nowhere else." Sometimes I like to say, but they all, one by one, and none falls in an inappropriate place. None falls in the wrong place. And one of the Zen students, by the name of Zen, said, "Then, where do they fall?" What did Koji do? He slapped them. The Zen student said, Koji, you shouldn't be so abrupt." Koji said, "If you are like that and call yourself a Zen student, the gatekeeper of hell will never let you go." The Zen student said, "What about yourself?" Got another one, the other cheek. Koji said, "You look, but you are like a blind man. You speak, but you are like a deaf mute." So Koji speaking here about the snowflakes falling. It's like Zazen. The snow globe is being stirred. We feel shaken up. Everything is flying around, or in Zazen, ideas come, manas comes, makyo comes, and all of those things fall somewhere. And we have to learn to appreciate that none of them appears in the wrong place. It just falls where it falls. This allowing to let that snow fall on you. Yesterday we sat outside and it was snowing a little bit. And just sitting there, sometimes the snowflakes came like this. Then and they go and sideways. And all of it. And none of them falls in the wrong place. So even if one gets in your eye, that kind of surrender, that kind of acceptance is a very important thing to learn in this practice. It is called Khanti or Kshanti, which we translate as patience. And the true nature of that kind of patience is not the patience that goes, when is enlightenment coming? It's late. Not that kind of patience, but the patience to abide with what is. To just abide with what is. That is the full acceptance of everything that arises conditionally. And when we sit there and we have ideas that are not as pliable as reality, then we get to be in trouble. And even Buddhist ideas, such as emptiness, can be obstructions. Going back to what Hakuin said, even those who have sat just one period of zazen will see all their harmful karma erased. How is that possible? So do you all remember what shunyata means? It's the absence of any inherent fixated nature. Now here's my question. Does that apply to karma? Or are Buddhist things exempt from it? Now, of course it applies to karma. Where is karma stored? In the First National Bank of Karma. Not FDIC insured. Negative interest rates. No ATMs. But it's still dealt out every day. How is that possible? How is that possible? That's a good answer. How is it possible? How are we, world honored one, how are we supposed, how shall virtuous persons approach this teaching of karma? How shall we do that? And everything that was said today points to it. Shunyata, the shunyata of shunyata, the emptiness of emptiness, the absence of inherent selfhood, no self, interconnectedness, dynamic functioning in relationship to each other. Pratitya samutpada, engi, Indra's net. How does a spider know that a fly is caught? Vibrations, yeah. The fly doesn't go in there. I'm here. No, it's trying not to be that way, but what it does, and throughout the whole net, the vibrations go. Now imagine that spider's name is Indra. Indra's net, the same thing in the interconnectedness. So pratitya samutpada, the co-dependent arising, these conditions are so multidimensional that, of course, for a mind that observes it from a temporal point of view, it seems as if there is some inherent karma-ness to it. And then we put bad karma, okay karma, good karma. But none of these labels really applies, because then karma as dharma, as shunyata, is just an always ongoing activity. An always ongoing activity that plays out when? In suchness. In suchness. Just like that. It plays out. It doesn't have any temporal component that is anywhere else than in this. And that is a very important understanding we need to develop, because that makes us realize where this activity intersects or makes this truth eternally reveal itself. It also means that when we sit here in Zazen, or when we chant, or when we leave here, it is living karma as an activity that also carries in it the ability of, let's use the word redemption, of freeing ourselves from it by actually living it in that moment and not turning it into something that we imagine is external and is waiting for us to work off. As soon as you start worrying about how do I make up for my harmful karma that has been produced and accumulated upon us. Well, that's not, somebody was in the banking industry. We should say that has been produced, and the effects are playing out as we are speaking. Just here, just nowhere else. With the open ability for us to not only be present, but to realize that cause and effect are truly one. And that whatever we do, any actualization of our insights, of our realizations, in this moment, that's where they make the real difference. It is very freeing. It doesn't change what is playing out. We might have done, I certainly have done things in the past that I deeply regret, that as a pattern of energy, even though it might be spinning out and diminishing slowly, is present. But it only is allowed to, it can only do that if we approach it from being completely here. If we spend 50% pondering about it, feeling bad about it, another 30%, then we only have 20% of our existence to actually make that difference. It's very simple. It's very simple. Hokoji says, be well. Life in the world is like shadows and echoes. Shadows and echoes. Yokyo are the characters. The first character is Kage, which is shadow. Yeah. The second one is Kyo, Hibiki. And if you put them together in modern Japanese, the word is Eikyo, which means effect. So putting together shadow and echo, effect. Again, the activity of Dharma, the activity of karma, really represented here, even in modern language. The interesting thing is that my ordination teacher and Shuko-san's ordination teacher, his room name, that is the name that he received when he became a Roshi at the age of 40, was Denkyo. It is this kyo, it's this echo. And den is to transmit, transmitting the echo. When it says that this world is like shadows and echoes, what Hokoji is saying to us is that this world of our human cogitation, of our conceptualization, of our labeling, that is the world of shadows and of echoes. It's not the real thing. It's not the real thing. And if you have to come to Doksan and there's some guy making noise with a stick and asks you where you are at this, where is Buddha? If you come with a shadow or an echo of it, no way. But if we enter the world of shunyata and recognize the inherent lack of anything fixated in everything we perceive, in everything we even think, in all phenomena, then it becomes very clear how we manifest in this world and how we can actualize that freedom that comes from not being fixated. If there were a gift, if we were thinking of anything that is a divine kind of thing, the greatest gift that this divine source could give us is the ability to be even free from selfhood. So shunyata is a beautiful thing. It is the freedom that we all function from. We are not looking at shunyata, we are not looking at dharmakaya. Dharmakaya and shunyata is looking through us. So in these last few hours today and tomorrow of this holy day session, please take these hints that I try so clumsily to express here into your zazen and see where the sacredness lies and how we all can actualize a sacred life that from the outside might look absolutely and should look absolutely profane.